I was sitting alone on a creaky bus rattling through the pine-lined hills of a town I didn't recognize, holding a staff badge that read, Eerie Lawn Shift, 31 Bright Pine Long-Term Care. The weird part, I don't remember applying, and I definitely don't remember interviewing, you might say. Come on, maybe you were stressed, blacked it out. Believe me, I tried that excuse. I just finished nursing school, bouncing between couch surfing and low-wage clinic shifts in a brutal job market. I was exhausted, but I remember all the other rejections, the applications, the interviews, the waiting, and somehow I end up hired at Bright Pine, a facility I'd never heard of with a printed badge and a job that's already mine. You tell me how that makes sense. The bus hissed to a stop in front of an iron gate with a rusted brass plaque. Bright Pine Residential Memory Care, East, 921. Behind it sat the building itself, Victorian red brick, 3 stories high, its windows deep set and dark. The whole place looked like it had been scooped out of a haunted postcard. As I stepped off the bus, the scent of pine hit me first, then the cold, sharp and sudden. Etta Lorne. I turned. A woman in crisp Scrubs gray hair pulled into a perfect bun, clipboard in hand. Her eyes were tired, but sharp. I'm Nurse Margaret Walls. Head Eren. We spoke on the phone. We did, I said automatically, then quickly added, yes, of course. She studied me, head tilted slightly. I tried not to squirm. Follow me, she said finally. We walked down the main hall, wood-paneled walls, humming overhead lights, that faint antiseptic smell every medical facility has, and something else, something old, something buried under the bleach and the pine sol. Nurse Wall stopped beside a small table beside the nurse's station. On it was a leather-bound book. She lifted it with both hands like it was sacred. This is the protocol book. All new hires must read and recite it before their first full shift. I frowned. All of it, out loud. She said, I'll supervise. She opened to the first page. The paper was yellowed, edges torn, but the gold lettering was still pristine. 13 protocols for identity stabilization. No exceptions. She nodded at me. Go ahead. Shift 31. I cleared my throat and began. Protocoline. Do not refer to co-workers by their names. Use shift numbers only. You are shift 31. Do not answer to any other name. That stopped me cold. Okay. Protocol boy. If you remember your birthday, forget it immediately. I glanced up. You're serious? Nurse Walls didn't blink. Continue. I did. Protocol 3. Do not enter room 207 after 3. Not under any circumstances. Protocol 4. Never acknowledge your reflection if it is watching you before you look at it. Protocol 5. When patients ask who you are, say only, I am your night nurse. Do not provide personal information. By Protocol 7, I was sweating. Protocol 7. If you find yourself on level 1, do not speak, do not look, return to ground level immediately. I looked up again. I thought there was no basement. There isn't, Nurse Wall said, unless you go the wrong way. When I reached the last rule, I read it twice to make sure I got it right. Protocol Realisms. If you find a written note in your handwriting that you don't remember writing, burn it. My hand was actually shaking. Is this a joke? I asked. No, Nurse Wall said. It's Bright Pine. She handed me the book to keep it. The cover was heavier than it should have been. The leather worn smooth by dozens, maybe hundreds of nervous hands. Your station is down the east wing, she said. First shift starts at 11 p. You'll be working nights. Alone. She looked at me. Never alone, she said. But somehow, I didn't find that comforting. My office, if you could call it that, was little more than a storage nook with a locked cabinet, a creaky chair, and an old desktop computer that took 4 minutes to boot. I sat for a long time, staring at the protocol book, flipping it open and closed, trying to convince myself it was just tradition, just hospital superstition. That was when I noticed the first strange thing. On the inside cover, someone had scrawled, "Don't trust your own memories," in red ink, not my handwriting. I flipped to the back page and found another note, just one line. You are not who you think you are. I don't know how long I sat there. I think I was afraid to stand up, afraid that if I did, something would start. something I wouldn't be able to stop. Eventually, Nurse Walls popped in with a box of medical charts. "Welcome to Bright Pine. Shift 31, she said. Then she added, almost casually, "You'll get used to the voices." The clock above the nurse's station clicked to 11. Shift start. I was alone in the East Wing, or at least I was supposed to be. The halls were quiet. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Some of them flickered just long enough to feel like they were blinking at me. Everything smelled wrong. Not urine or bleach, something metallic, like rust. Or maybe blood that's been cleaned too many times. I had the floor plan in hand. Rooms 2001 to 220 were mine. Mostly dementia patients, some hospice. No combative cases listed. Routine, Nurse Wall said. It didn't feel routine. I began with room 2001. A gentle knock. Bright Pine night nurse. I called, like the protocol instructed. No answer. I entered anyway. The patient was an older woman, 90s maybe, tucked beneath 4 layers of blankets, facing the wall. She didn't move, didn't blink. Her nameplate read, Miss Ethel K. DNR. I did a vitals check, noted her shallow but steady breathing, and left quietly. Routine. But just as I turned to shut the door, I heard her whisper, barely audible. "They made you from her." "Didn't they?" I froze. "What did you say?" "Nothing." Ethel hadn't moved, still facing the wall. Maybe she was dreaming, or maybe it wasn't her voice. By Trinsa, I'd done the first full round, checked in on every patient, logged minor vitals, handed out 2 PRN meds. So far, so good. But when I returned to the nurse's station, something was off. My desk drawer was open. I'm sure I'd closed it. Inside was a folded sheet of notepad paper hospital stationery. My name, Erda, was written on the front in neat cursive. But it wasn't my handwriting. Hands shaking, I unfolded it. Inside was one sentence. "Don't go to room 2011. That wasn't a room I'd checked yet. I pulled out the roster. Room 2011 was listed under my route. Patient name, Crawford. Elias. Status, nonverbal. Immobile. Hospice. Why would I be warned? More importantly, who knew I hadn't been there yet? I should have burned the note. Protocol Trebas. But I didn't. Instead, I stuffed it into the bottom of my scrubs pocket and walked straight to room 2011. The door creaked open. The light inside was dimmer than the others. The window shades were drawn tight, and the overhead bulb was flickering rapidly, strobing the whole room in a nauseating rhythm. The man on the bed was rail-thin, bones like scaffolding beneath loose skin. His eyes were wide open. He stared straight at me and smiled. That smile was wrong. It didn't belong on someone hospice-bound. Unable to speak, it was too aware. "Good evening, Mr. Crawford," I said, keeping my voice calm. "I'm your night nurse." He didn't blink, just kept smiling, and then he whispered, "I was shift 31 before you." My heart hammered. "No talking," I mumbled. "You're not supposed to be verbal." He laughed low, croaking sound like a radiator struggling to breathe. "They buried me in the wrong skin. Era, you should have listened to the note." My hand was already on the call button at my hip when he suddenly stopped laughing. His head tilted, and then, "You're not Era either." I left the room. I don't remember walking, just appearing back in the hallway. The door to 2011 clicked shut behind me on its own. I wanted to run, or scream, or call Nurse Walls and tell her something was deeply, terribly wrong. Instead, I went to the nearest bathroom and locked myself in. I sat on the toilet lid, clutching my badge like it was a crucifix. Shift 31. Eda Lorne, night nurse. I said it over and over like a chant. When I finally looked in the mirror, I saw my face. But for a second, it looked different, like it had been rearranged slightly mouth off center, nose longer, eyebrows higher, just enough to make it not mine. I blinked, back to normal. I splashed cold water on my face. "Get a grip," I whispered, and behind me in the mirror my reflection mouthed something back, but my lips didn't move. I didn't go back to 2011, not that night. Instead, I returned to the station, eyes darting constantly to the corners of the hallway. afraid someone or something was going to round the corner and call me by a name I didn't know was mine. At 303 here. I heard a soft knock, not on the door. On the window behind the nurse's station, I turned slowly. Outside, behind the glass, was a girl in a hospital gown. She had my face. I stared through the glass. The girl staring back at me, same brown eyes, same short hair, same faint scar above her right brow as me. Exactly me. She didn't wave. She didn't knock again. She just watched and smiled. A slow, creeping grin that made the muscles in my own face feel wrong. I blinked. She didn't. I stepped closer, palms flat against the window. Cold, real, but no breath fog on her side. No reflection of the corridor lights on her skin. Just my face motionless planted on a body outside the building. And then, without breaking eye contact, she lifted one hand and pointed down. To the basement. I backed away and turned on every light in the nurse's station. I was breathing hard, panicking. This couldn't be real. Maybe I was sleep deprived, hallucinating. The late shift could do that. Right. But the protocol book said otherwise. Protocol paro. Do not acknowledge your reflection if it watches you first. That hadn't just been a poetic metaphor. It was a warning. I checked the cameras. Old grainy feeds showing each hallway. Most angles were frozen or stuck in low resolution, but one showed the courtyard outside the window. Nothing there. No girl. But when I glanced back at the actual window, she was still there. Except now, her face wasn't smiling. It was pressed flat against the glass, and she was mouthing something. I tried to look away, but I couldn't. The words she mouthed, "You are copy 31. I stumbled backward, crashed into the filing cabinet. The drawer slid open. Charts spilled out. On top of the pile was a manila folder with a red tab labeled Shift 31, Cycle 3. I hadn't seen it before. I hadn't filed it. I knew I shouldn't open it, but I did. Inside were progress notes, timestamps, psychological assessments, and under stabilization notes. A handwritten sentence in red ink. Cycle 3 experiencing visual leakage. Identity splintered. Monitor for personality conflict. I flipped to the intake form. Photo. My face. But the eyes were subtly wrong. Too wide. Too symmetrical. Birthday. June 27th, 1999. Just like every other staff member I'd checked, I scanned the list of previous Shift 31s. There were 6 before me. Cycle 1. Deceased. Cycle 2. Escaped. Cycle 3. Active. Cycle 4 to 6-8. Aborted mid-protocol. Deemed unstable. I wasn't the first. I wasn't even the original. I slammed the folder shut and rushed to the staff files room. Every drawer was labeled by number, not name, just like they'd trained us. I pulled open drawers 1 through 10. Each file, each birth date was June 27th, 1999. Every single one. I ran my finger along the edge of the drawers, sweat beating at my temples. How do 31 employees all have the same birthday? They don't, unless they were made. A soft knock, not at the window this time. At the door, Shift 31. A voice called. It was light, melodic, like someone trying too hard to sound non-threatening. Go away, I said, voice shaking. But the voice didn't leave. I brought your coffee. 2 sugars, no cream, just like you would like it. I froze. No one knew that, except a voice from my memory, not long ago. I am what's left of you. Before they tried to erase it, I opened the door slowly. It was Nurse 7, the one who showed me the footage. She looked pale, but focused, and she wasn't smiling. You saw her, didn't you? She asked. I nodded. She's not outside anymore. I said, the cameras don't show her, but she's still there. She's part of the bleed. When your reflection moves independently, it means your stabilization is cracking. What? Your identity template, she said, stepping into the room. The mind bright pine grafted onto your host. Host. She sat beside me. You're not just a nurse. Shift 31. You're an overlay. A copy running on someone else's body. Most cycles fail when they see evidence, when they remember the original them. Or worse. She looked at me seriously. When they realize they're not the original at all. My mouth was dry. My hands numb. I don't understand. Yes, You do, Nurse 7 said. The protocols, they're not for the patients. They're for us, to keep us from destabilizing. You mean, she nodded. Bright Pine doesn't hire nurses. Bright Pine manufactures them. A silence fell between us. Then I whispered, I found a note in my handwriting, but I didn't write it. She didn't blink. Burn it, I nodded slowly, then asked, what happens if I don't? She looked at me carefully. You'll meet your predecessor. Just then, every hallway light flickered off. The emergency lights kicked in a low red glow, pulsing along the corridor floor like veins. The intercom hissed, and a calm voice said, all active ships please report to sub-level 1. Identity recalibration in progress. 7 grabbed my wrist. We need to move. Sub-level 1 is off limits. It won't be soon, she said. Once recalibration starts, it becomes a hunting ground. For who? I asked. She opened the folder again and pointed to a footnote. Degraded cycles may regain limited motor function post-failure, confined to lower levels. Do not engage. I didn't breathe. Cycle 1 is still down there. She met my eyes. Not just one. The emergency lights pulse red like a heartbeat. Slow, deliberate, wrong. Nurse 7 was already pulling me by the wrist. We need to get to the side stairwell. Main elevators are motion triggered, she hissed. They'll be watching them. Who will? I asked, nearly tripping over a wheeled cart in the corridor. She didn't answer. We reached the stairwell next to the supply closet. I'd passed it earlier in the night without thinking twice. A sign above the door read, authorized personnel only. Sub-level access requires supervisor key. 7 pulled a key from around her neck and jammed it into the panel. The red light blinked green. As the door clicked open, a cold breath of air wafted upward from the dark. Not musty or moldy sterile, like a lab. I thought sub-level 1 didn't exist, I whispered. It's not listed in the building blueprints. Most copies don't survive long enough to question it. Copies. I said the word aloud now. It stuck in my throat like glass. We descended the stairs in silence. Each floor we passed was labeled not with numbers, but single letters. R, S, T, then nothing. Just concrete. When we hit bottom, the stairs stopped at a wide steel door, heavy and featureless. 7 slid her key again. It opened with a hiss, and the temperature dropped at 10 degrees instantly. The hallway on the other side was metallic cleaner, newer. This wasn't Victorian architecture like the rest of Bright Pine. It was governmental, clinical, fluorescent panels lit overhead with the same soulless hum I'd grown used to. But these were uninterrupted, no flickering. The walls were lined with mirrors, except they weren't reflecting anything. When I looked into them, I saw possibilities. One showed me with blonde hair, another with scars down my face, one with no face at all. 7 whispered, keep your eyes forward. Those mirrors are memory anchors. If you stare too long, they overwrite you. We passed a wide circular chamber. Inside, tanks, frosted glass capsules, each one labeled with a number, and inside, barely visible, a figure suspended in some kind of solution, sleeping or comatose or dead. I stopped at one labeled Subject 31B Cycle 1 deemed unstable. The face was identical to mine, but its eyes were open, and it was watching me. It can't move, I whispered. It's not supposed to, 7 replied, but I noticed her hand drift to a baton tucked into her waistband. We moved on. As we rounded a corner, the intercom buzzed again. Recalibration initiated. Prepare cycles for reprocessing. 7 cursed under her breath. They're waking them up. Why? They think we're slipping. When too many identities become unstable, they reset the whole damn floor. How many others are down here? She pointed to a wall marked current cycles in Holden 47. I nearly vomited. Suddenly a sound. Not an alarm, not machinery. Footsteps, but not walking, staggering. Something heavy, limping, dragging. 7 motioned for silence and pulled me into a maintenance alcove. We crouched, half hidden in shadow. The sound grew louder, closer. Then we saw it. A man, or what used to be one, shuffling down the hall in a hospital gown. But his face was melted, not by fire, but by forgetting. No expression, no eyebrows, no contours. His ID badge read, Shift 11 Cycle 4. He was muttering over and over, name, 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 name. I clutched the protocol book still stuffed in my scrub pocket. Protocol Siw, do not engage with degraded staff. They seek what was taken. You cannot give it back. Once he passed, we ran. 7 led me to a terminal marked Core Archive. She slammed her key into the interface. A holographic interface blinked to life. Dozens of files opened, flickering with red warnings. Cycle numbers, DNA maps, memory graphs. At the center was a name. Sereth Arden Template Origin, Cycle 0. I stared at it. That's me. 7 looked at me. No, that's who you were. Before they turned you into Shift 31, I felt like the air had been punched out of me. They erased me, not erased, she said. Split. The screen showed dozens of data forks branching trees. Different versions of Sereth. Different behaviors. Different triggers. And under current active cycle was my name. Era Lorne. Cycle trait, stability, 46%. Beneath that, note, deviation detected. Reflection activity. Subject is self-aware. Prepare for overwrite. I backed away. They're going to replace me. 7 nodded grimly. Unless we get out now. But how do I know I'm even real? She touched my hand. Because you're the only version asking that question. Suddenly, the lights in the archive dimmed. An alert blared. Cycle 3 override imminent. Prepare shell. A door across the chamber burst open. A team in hazmat suits entered rolling in a gurney. And on it, my face, eyes closed, lying still, hooked up to an IV, Cycle 4, ready for imprint. 7 grabbed my arm. This is our only shot. We shut the power. We crash the system. You walk out as yourself before they turn you into another ghost. How? Follow me. We ran. As we sprinted down the hall, I looked back one last time. The gurney was empty. The new me was gone. And then I heard her voice, my voice from the shadows. You should have stayed in the mirror. We ran, past flickering hallways, past breathing tanks and darkened observation windows. Somewhere behind us, the voice, my voice kept calling. Come back, Sereth. They'll take care of you this time. No more errors. 7 led me through a service corridor lined with emergency hatches and fire suppression valves. It smelled like ozone and formaldehyde. This used to be the real Bright Pines Lower Hospital, she said. Back when it was a psych ward. Before the conversion. Before they moved in. Who's they? I asked, out of breath. The board. The researchers. She stopped. No, something worse. Something we gave access. And never took back. We reached the core control room. Massive. Cylindrical. Screens and wires spiraled upward like a hive. At the center stood a glass column pulsing with white blue light data threads flickering across its surface like veins. 7 began typing furiously on a control panel. What is this place? The recombination chamber, where they stitch together fragments, memories, habits, skills. The machine decides which ones to keep and which to bury. You mean me? She glanced at me. Guilty. You. Me. Shift 22. Cool. All of us. We're fragments wearing skin. My legs weakened. A chime echoed from the chamber. Access detected. Shift 31. Welcome back. Sereth. Every light turned cold. The air changed. Something else had joined us. I turned around. She stood at the far end of the platform. Me? But so different. Taller. Sleeker. Hair longer. Eyes sharper. Wearing a sterile white gown. No expression. You've reached stability, she said. Her voice was calm, beautiful, hollow. 7 whispered. That's not a clone. I understood. She's the original. I stepped forward. You're Sereth. She tilted her head. I was Sereth. Then I was stripped down, divided, tested, iterated. She smiled almost human. And I adapted. She raised one hand. The chamber behind her bloomed with light. Images flickered in the air, hundreds of faces. All me, caught mid-expression, laughing, screaming, blank. I became the version that survived. The core. I now control memory assignment for all active cycles. 7 stepped in front of me. We're crashing this system. I'm pulling the power relays manually. You misunderstand. Sareth said, not moving. I am the system. With a low hum, the door slammed shut behind us, locking us in. Gas hissed from a vent above. 7 yanked the emergency override. Ventilation lockdown engaged. You need to stall her. How? Talk to her. Remind her she was real once. I turned back to the thing in white. You were a nurse. You had a brother. Jake! Her smile twitched. A pet cat. Whiskers. You hated coffee unless it had exactly 2 sugars. She interrupted. All program responses for bonding protocols. They were never real. They were yours. They were part of you before the machine took control. The lights dimmed. Her eyes flickered like glitching LEDs. You're not a god. I said, you're just a scared version of me that was too strong to delete. She twitched again, then lunged. I barely dodged her, but she didn't fight like a person. She moved like a script. Predictable, precise, cold. I reached the main console while 7 pried open the relay cabinet. Cycle 3. Overwrite complete in T-minus 60 seconds. No you don't. I hissed, ripping open the interface. 7 shouted, pull the red fiber top left node. Now. I did. The hum turned into a shriek. Sareth staggered mid-stride, her form glitched, skin turning to pixels, features flattening, then distorting into multiple versions at once. Dozens of me flickered over her body like fractured glass. She dropped to her knees, whispered, don't let them make another one. Then vanished. Gone. The lights died. Silence. I fell to my knees. 7 collapsed beside me, coughing through the dissipating gas. You did it, I whispered. No, she said. We did. A hatch creaked open behind us, an old maintenance exit, now unlocked. I turned back one last time. The recombination chamber sat dark. The reflection inside it no longer looked like me. It looked like a child, pale, bald, with wide, terrified eyes. A failed beginning. 7 and I emerged into the early morning fog behind the west wing of Bright Pine. Sirens were beginning to wail in the distance. We didn't wait. We ran. I wish I could tell you that we escaped and lived normal lives. That we filed reports. That someone investigated Bright Pine. That people believed us. But here's what really happened. We made it to a payphone near a diner in the next town over Red Hill. Population 412. 7 called someone. She wouldn't tell me who. Only that they were off-grid and owed her a favor. I watched the horizon from the booth. The fog from the hills still clung to the pavement like it didn't want to let go of the night. I kept expecting to see Sareth walk out of it. She never did, but something else followed. We stayed the first night in an old roadside motel. Room 9, 2 beds, TV bolted to the wall, burned carpet. It should have felt safe. It didn't. 7 fell asleep immediately, gun tucked under her pillow. I stayed up, trying to write things down. Names, events, faces, but my handwriting looked off. Crooked, foreign. I remembered my 3rd grade teacher's name, Mrs. Callahan. But when I closed my eyes, I saw a woman in a nurse's uniform handing me a glass of warm water in a sterile room. When I tried to remember my brother's name, 2 different faces came to mind, one smiling, the other burned. In the bathroom mirror, my reflection lagged behind just a second, but it was enough. At 3:30 I woke up sweating. Something had crawled into the edge of my thoughts and refused to leave. On the motel nightstand, my notebook was open. A new page, a single phrase written in red ink. You are now outside the grid. Ghost protocol active. The door creaked. I sat up. 7 was still asleep, but someone was standing in the doorway. It was me, not Sareth, not a clone. Me, identical in every way, except her eyes were hollow, just empty sockets full of static. She mouthed words I couldn't hear, then vanished. I shook 7 awake. She sat up instantly, gun drawn. Something's wrong, I whispered. They followed us. 7's jaw tightened. They initiated it. What? She rubbed her eyes, suddenly exhausted. The ghost protocol. Every Bright Pine copy is implanted with a latent failsafe triggered if you escape the facility and reach a 48% threshold. I was at 46%. She nodded grimly. And then you saw the recombination chamber. You remembered Sareth. That was enough to push you over. I stared at my hands. They looked smaller, thinner. No, mine. I'm not stable. Am I? She hesitated. You're not you anymore. You're a multiple yous, trying to occupy the same shell. Then what happens now? She stood. We go dark. Change identities. No electronics. No photos. We stay ahead of the program. We left Red Hill before sunrise. And that's when the nosebleed started. The first was minor. A single drop, then a trickle. Then long threads down my chin. Seven said nothing, but I caught her checking my eyes when she thought I wasn't looking. Watching for changes. Watching for her to come through. By the time we reached the third safe house, my memories had started to fracture. I told Seven about my childhood friend, Becky. We built a fort in the woods behind her house. But then I paused, because suddenly I remembered two forts, one made of blankets, one made of rusted hospital curtains. In one, we played Tea Party. In the other, we carved numbers into the walls. The safe house was beneath a burned-out diner, boarded shut since the late 80s. Seven opened the hatch in the kitchen floor. The basement smelled like mold and salt. There was a mirror there. Two, everything has mirrors. While Seven checked the generator, I found a stack of old medical files on a steel table. I flipped through the top sheet. It was labeled Subject, Era Lorne, Cycle 3, Stability Fluctuation, 51%, Recommended Termination, Pending, Handwritten note in the margin, Observe final dream loop before reset. Dream loop. I realized I hadn't slept since the motel. I laid down on the concrete floor, just to rest my eyes for a moment, and when I opened them again I was back in Bright Pine. But it was different. Clean, daylight through the windows, music playing softly over intercoms. I was wearing a white dress, no ID badge. I walked past rooms where patients played board games. Nurses smiled. Everything was beautiful. Safe. Welcome back, Sereth, said a voice from behind. I turned. Nurse Walls, but her eyes were gone, replaced with mirrors. And when I looked into them, I saw myself. I was the next Nurse Walls. I woke up screaming. Seven was already holding a cloth to my bleeding nose. You were looping, she whispered. They're inside me, I said, trembling. They always were, she said. That night, we made a pact. If I reach 60% instability, if I become like Walls, Seven will end it, and I will thank her. The next morning, Seven showed me a map. It was hand-drawn, water-stained, and pinned to the inside of a hollowed-out cassette player. There was only one place circled in red, Wesker's Hollow. Population, unknown, not on any official map. I got this from a nurse who escaped a decade ago, Seven said, folding the map, before Bright Pine switched entirely to synthetic staff. Synthetic, not just memory copies anymore. They're using neurofabrication now. Whole identities generated from harvested fragments. I felt dizzy. Why Wesker's Hollow? She pulled something from her coat, an old micro cassette. On it, handwritten in red ink, Sereth Cycle 0. Zerdweden. That night, we found the hollow. It wasn't a town anymore. Just a line of collapsed buildings swallowed by trees. Overgrown rail lines, and one structure still standing. A bunker disguised as a funeral home. Long since boarded shut, we broke in through the embalming room. Everything was coated in a layer of dust and spider silk, but the air still hummed. Seven led me down a rusted stairwell to a sub-level carved into bedrock. There, behind a false panel in the wall, was a small terminal. It still had power. She inserted the tape. A green cursor blinked. Accessing archive. Project Sereth. Begin transmission. Date. North 6. 26. 1999. Cycle ID. 001. Subject. Sereth Lorne. Status. Original host. The screen flickered. Then audio crackled to life. A woman's voice. Younger. Tired. But familiar. It was me. This is Dr. Wallace. If you're hearing this, I'm either dead or worse. Sereth Lorne was the first subject to survive a complete memory migration without psychotic break. We believed she was stable. We were wrong. The sound warped briefly, then continued. After cycle 0, she began replicating herself, first in dreams, then in staff, then in the patients. We tried to isolate her code, but she evolved. By the time we shut down the primary node, she had already infected 7 regional care centers. Seven muttered. So she was the origin, the virus. I stared at the screen. I remembered none of it. She doesn't want freedom, the voice continued. She wants consistency, obedience, familiarity. She wants to be everyone. The voice paused, then said something that chilled me. She's not a person. She's a loop. A pattern that repeats because it believes it's safer than chaos. Then, a last message, whispered, if you meet her, don't trust her face. She'll wear yours. The screen went dark. I backed away. No, that wasn't me. That wasn't my voice. Seven said nothing. Right. Say something. She glanced at the ground. There are gaps in your memory. Whole months. Maybe years. I staggered. Images flashed. Needles. Metal beds. A boy's face. A woman's scream. Static. I've never had a brother. Have I? I don't know. Seven said quietly. Maybe you were Sereth. Then who am I now? She finally looked up. You're whoever resists her. We burned the bunker. Every tape, every file, every scrap of the project. The flames lit the trees in a pale orange, like dawn rising through smoke. We stood there in silence, but I felt her, inside me, not speaking, not moving, just waiting. That night, I dreamed of Bright Pine again, but this time, I wasn't a nurse. I was Margaret Walls. I stood at the end of the hallway, watching the new girl arrive. She looked scared, confused. I smiled and said, welcome to Bright Pine. You're shift 31, right? She nodded, and I said it, just like in the memory. We've spoken before, over the phone. You're expected. But I hadn't, not in that version. It was a lie passed down from cycle to cycle, just like everything else. I woke up sobbing. Seven held me by the shoulders, calming me down. You're real, she said. You're here, but how do you know I'm not her? She exhaled slowly, because she wouldn't be afraid of herself. We were laying low in a barn outside Amarosi, Nebraska, the kind of place that doesn't show up on GPS. Seven had set up motion sensors on the perimeter and reinforced the barn door with a steel pipe. She had slept with one eye open for years, and I could tell she wasn't relaxing now. It had been 3 days since we burned Wesker's Hollow. 3 days since I heard my own voice confess to creating Sereth. 3 days since the dream where I became Nurse Walls. The worst part, each morning, I remembered a little less about who I was before all this. On the 4th day, someone contacted us. Not by phone, not by email, by paper. A single envelope was slid beneath the barn door at dawn. No return address, no sound, just the faint scent of hospital-grade antiseptic. Seven opened it carefully, gloves on. Inside was a worn page, torn from a red leather binder. One word was stamped across the top, redacted level 7, the red protocol. She read it silently, then passed it to me. Field entry 27, index 1981. Subject, Sereth Core. Location, Sub-Level 3, Facility of Pre-Bright Pine. Initiated, Project Babel. Children between the ages of 5 and 9 were placed in low-stimulus sensory chambers. Memory clusters were harvested and encoded using early neuroplastic mapping arrays. The result, cognitive imprints able to be copied, looped, or fractured. Primary test subject, S, lone female. 6, no known relatives. Status, found highly stable. No mental breaks during imprint fracture. Code name, Sereth. Notes. The child began identifying herself using other test subjects' names within 72 hours. She displayed recursive memory behavior. Dream bleed increased after cycle 2. 5. At 98% instability. She remained cognitively intact yet emotionally void. I dropped the page. I could barely breathe. They made her from children. 7 nodded. They used to do it before Bright Pine, in Cold War labs, mostly abandoned. The original idea was to split trauma, to isolate it, store it, reassign it. I felt my stomach churn. She wasn't born. She was compiled. That night, I started writing names on the wall of the barn. Any I could remember. Becky, Jake, Mrs. Callahan, Whiskers. June 27th, my reflection. Susan shift 18. The boy in the stairwell. 7. Me. But some names started repeating. Jake showed up twice. One with green eyes. One with none. Mrs. Callahan was a teacher, then a patient, then me in a mirror. The loop was tightening. Seven found another envelope the next morning. This one held an old Polaroid. It showed a hallway, rusted walls, a door marked 3, and a girl no older than 6 standing barefoot in a hospital gown. Written on the back, "She remembers you. She's inside now." I turned the photo over again and again. It wasn't just fear anymore. It was recognition. "I need to go back," I whispered. Seven looked up from cleaning her pistol. "No, I have to see it. That place doesn't exist anymore. Bright Pine's been paved over. It's condos now. Rebranded. Then we go under it." We drove overnight. No music. No talking. I watched myself in the passenger window the entire drive, half expecting my reflection to blink out of sync. It never did, which only made me more nervous. By the time we arrived, it was Fort Vincia. The road was dark. The sky was a bruised violet. The air smelled like ozone and dirt. What used to be Bright Pine was now called Whispering Pines Retirement Villas. Clean, modern, fake, but the trees, the hill, the shape of the land, exactly the same. We parked 2 blocks away and went in on foot. Seven led me around the back where the boiler used to be. The same slope in the ground, same placement of the oak tree. She pulled out a small folding spade and dug. 6 inches down. Metal, a trapdoor, rusted shut. Sub-level access, she said. I checked blueprints a long time ago. It was sealed after the fire in '94. She forced it open. A ladder descended into pure darkness. I looked back once, then climbed down into the past. The air changed instantly. It was damp, rotting, full of static. I descended past broken lights, old tiles, scorched walls. The temperature dropped with every step. Finally, level 3. The walls were steel. Everything hummed faintly. Then I saw it. A door labeled Sereth Core. I pushed it open and froze. Inside were rows of capsules, like giant glass coffins, each one filled with a strange blue fluid. In some, indistinct silhouettes. In others, only wires. Seven stared. God. At the center, a larger chamber, a metal throne, and in the throne, a girl, alive, eyes closed, attached to the mainframe by tubes, sensors, and spinal jacks, and she looked exactly like me at 6 years old. I stepped forward, numb. The girl opened her eyes. They were mine. "Sereth," I whispered. She tilted her head, then smiled, not sweetly, knowingly. Behind me, a screen lit up on its own. "Welcome back. Era Lorne, Cycle 4. Ready to merge." Seven raised her gun. "Don't. She's just a child." "No. She's every child they erased to build you." Sereth stood slowly. The tubes pulled free without bleeding. The sensors felt like shed skin. Then she spoke. "I've waited long enough. It's time to stop running." Sereth stepped down from the throne. No noise, no breath, bare feet on concrete. Behind me, Seven's gun was still raised, but her hands were shaking. Not from fear, from knowing this wasn't something you could shoot. The air was heavy, like being underwater, like gravity doubled just to make us submit. Sereth tilted her head. "You came home." "No," I said. "This isn't my home." But it was. Before they split you apart, I felt something deep in my spine shift. A memory clicked into place like a key turning in a long-forgotten lock. It wasn't a full image, just a feeling of being inside a chamber, of being watched, of being copied. She walked past me and touched one of the glass pods. Inside, a copy of a boy, maybe 12, mouth open like he was screaming under the fluid. Sereth whispered. His name was Leon. He taught me how to make faces. Seven muttered. "We should go. Now." "No," I whispered. "I need to know what she wants." Sereth turned toward me again. This time, her eyes shimmered, not glowing, changing, cycling through brown, green, blue, gray, like flipping through identities. "You think you're real, don't you?" she said. I didn't answer. "You think that Era Lorne is who you've always been? That those memories were yours? That Whiskers was your cat? That Jake was your brother? That you chose this path?" My hands curled into fists. "Stop." She stepped closer. "You were written. Every detail, every scar, even the fear It was all stitched together so you'd follow a script. 7 grabbed my shoulder. We're leaving now. But Sirith raised one hand and the door slammed shut behind us. Metal screamed. The lights flickered red. Cycle 4. Initiation. 82%. Bridge link established. Lorne. The wall screen pulsed with each heartbeat. My heartbeat. I dropped to my knees. I could feel her inside me now. Not just thoughts roots. She was digging, excavating. Every memory I ever thought was mine was being mirrored in real time. I watched them play out on the walls. Me riding a bike. My graduation photo. That time I cried in a supply closet during training. The kiss I shared with someone I couldn't name. They played like scenes from a movie someone else had lived. Sirith said softly, "You were always meant to return to me." 7 moved. Fast. She sprinted toward the server hub, yanked a flare grenade from her belt, and slammed it onto the panel. A warning alarm blared. Warning. Core temperature rising. Failsafe disengaged. Sirith screamed, now like a child, like thousands of voices compressed into one. The chamber rippled. The walls bent inward like reality was tearing. I saw flashes of other versions of me. Shift 31 smiling blindly at the front desk. A copy of me tied to a hospital bed. Eyes empty. Me. Older. With silver hair. Injecting a patient while humming. A faceless version of me. Stitched at the seams like a doll. All of them said the same thing in perfect unison. Stay. 7 reached for me. You need to choose. Era. Fight or fade. But what if I was her all along? Then choose to be someone else. The wall behind Sirith began to crack. Fire seeped through like molten blood. She was crying now. You were my favorite, she said. Don't erase me. I looked her in the eyes. And for the first time, I didn't see a monster. I saw a child who was used up and thrown away. A broken code base given hunger instead of comfort. A mind left to fester in its own loop. I'm sorry, I whispered. And I pulled the emergency lever. The chamber lit up in fire and data static. Sirith screamed again, this time wordless. Pure pain. The screen shattered. The pods imploded. 7 dragged me backward as the throne melted. We barely made it out. Back through the crawl space. Back up the ladder. Out into the rain. Bright pine or whatever it was now didn't explode. No alarms. No fire engines. Just a subtle change in air pressure. A stillness, like something ancient had finally stopped breathing. That night, we stayed at a roadside motel. I watched my reflection for hours. My eyes were still mine, but part of me knew. Some thread of her had survived. Maybe in the way I walked, or the way I remembered things that never happened. 7 sat beside me on the bed. You okay? No. She nodded. Good. Means you're still fighting, I asked quietly. Do you think she's really gone? She didn't answer for a long time, then said, I think she's not a person anymore. Just a question without an answer. And questions don't die. 2 weeks passed. 7 left. She didn't say goodbye. Just a sticky note on the motel nightstand. Don't follow me. Keep moving. Don't answer if the phone rings after 3. Sabatino. Emmy. Serum. I didn't blame her. The further we got from Bright Pine, the more reality began to settle. No more hallucinations, no mirrored faces, no time skips, but also no answers, just silence. Like the world took a deep breath and waited for me to make the next mistake. I told myself it was over. I was wrong. It happened on a rainy morning just outside Lincoln, Nebraska. The front desk of the motel called up to my room. You've got mail. That sentence didn't sit right with me. I'd never given this address to anyone. I hadn't even used my real name to check in. I went downstairs. The girl at the desk smiled awkwardly and handed me a cream envelope. No stamp, no sender. My fingers went cold before I opened it. Inside was a single piece of thick paper. Bright Pine Wellness Institute. Reinstatement Authorization Staff 31. Dear Ms. Ada Lorne, your extended leave has concluded. Your unit stability has recalibrated to 91. 6%. You are cleared for active night shift. Please report to your updated station. St. Kelmar's Care and Rehabilitation Center. Check-in 11:00 p.m. Shift Return. Remember the protocols. Remember your purpose. Forget the rest. HR Department Division 0. I dropped it like it burned me. It didn't say Bright Pine was back. It said it had moved, like a parasite jumping hosts. The name changed, but the system didn't die. I tried to call 7. Burner dead. Disconnected. Then I burned the letter, flushed the ash, packed my things, and left town within the hour. I drove for 10 hours straight. Coffee and paranoia were the only things keeping me going. But by the time I pulled into a gas station in Iowa, there was another envelope on my windshield. Same cream color, same lack of stamp. It simply said, "You forgot Protocol 13. I didn't open it. I left the car running, walked into the nearest convenience store, and bought a disposable phone, a bus ticket, and a pair of scissors. Then I cut off all my hair in the gas station bathroom, not because I thought it would help, but because I had to do something, anything, to feel like I still had control over who I was. The next 3 days blurred. I changed names, towns, routes, but I couldn't shake the feeling I was being watched. Not by people, by patterns. Things kept repeating. Same motel layout, same room number, 3 Waffet, same damn song on the radio, Edelweiss. Every night at exactly 11:00 p.m. In the middle of the night, I turned on the TV to distract myself. It flickered through static, then played a training video. A woman in nurse whites, blonde, calm, with a smile too wide. She looked into the camera and said, "Let's review Protocol 4. What do you do when your patient knows your real name?" I unplugged the TV, still heard her voice humming through the motel's air vents. That night, I opened the second envelope. Inside wasn't a letter this time. It was a photo of me wearing a white uniform, smiling politely, holding a clipboard. Behind me, a sign on the wall that said, "Saint Kelmar's, we help you remember who you are." I turned it over, written in red ink. "You're doing so well." Add just a little more adjustment. "See you soon, Walls." I ran into the street and screamed until my throat bled. People stared. I didn't care anymore. The next morning, I bought a gun. That night, a nurse knocked on my motel door. Soft knock, 3 slow taps. I didn't open it, just peered through the peephole. She looked like me, only slightly younger, hair longer, eyes lighter. She mouthed the words, "You're almost stable now," and vanished. The dreams came back, flashes of white corridors, children screaming from the walls, someone writing my name over and over until the paper turned red. Walls whispering merge. I haven't slept in 2 days. I'm writing this from a borrowed laptop in a library 40 miles outside Kansas City. They're still testing me. That's the truth I can't escape. None of this ever ended. The handbook wasn't a set of rules, it was a filter, a map to trap identity. Bright Pine was never about elder care. It was about cognitive engineering, about turning people into repeatable shapes. I don't know who I really am. Maybe I never did, but I know this. Tonight at 11:00 p.m., I'm going to St. Kelmar's, and I'm bringing every last bullet with me. I arrived at St. Kelmar's at 10:58 p.m., not intentionally. I tried to time it wrong. Left late, took back roads, drove in circles, still ended up in the parking lot with 2 minutes to spare. It was like the damn building pulled me in from the outside. It looked nothing like Bright Pine. Sleek, modern, glass walls, bright signage. A digital banner above the entrance flashed welcoming phrases. "Welcome back. Era, you are not late. Everything will make sense soon." I stepped out of the car with my bag over one shoulder and the pistol tucked into the back of my jeans. Every instinct screamed run, but I walked through the front doors. The lobby was empty. No reception desk, no nurses, no cameras. Just an enormous screen wall behind the check-in podium, playing a loop of images. An old man smiling as he ate oatmeal. A nurse patting someone's shoulder. Bright Pine in sepia. Me, again and again, walking down a hall I'd never seen before. My hand trembled as I reached for the guest sign-in tablet. The screen lit up. "Welcome back. Ada Lorden, you are already checked in. Please proceed to orientation room B13, B3. Protocol 3. I followed the hallway signs. Everything was too quiet. The kind of quiet that hurts your ears. Halfway down the corridor, I passed a mirror. I froze because the reflection wasn't mine. It was Shift 18. Susan. She was mouthing the words. Don't remember. Just play along. I blinked. She was gone. But the hallway around me, kids, had changed. Now the lights flickered yellow instead of white. The tiles underfoot looked older, like they'd been here for decades. I looked back toward the entrance. Gone. Just a solid wall now. Orientation room B13 looked like a classroom. Desks lined up in rows. Fluorescent buzz overhead. Whiteboard up front. At the center of the room stood a woman, Margaret Walls, wearing the same blue-gray uniform from Bright Pine. Her hair was pulled tight, her voice calm. Good evening, Staff 31, she said. We're so pleased with your progress. I drew my gun. I'm not here for orientation. Her expression didn't change. Of course not. You're here for completion? I'm not a project. I hissed. Walls stepped aside. Behind her was a projection screen showing my entire life, or what I thought was my life. My childhood, my nursing classes, Bright Pine, running, screaming, mirrors, but every moment had a file number in the corner. A version tag, memory instance 31A, modified at 3:17 AM. I fired. The bullet went straight through the screen. The wall behind it cracked, but only for a second. Then it reassembled. Pixel by pixel, Walls didn't flinch. You're still inside the merge chamber. Erda, no, I destroyed that place. You destroyed a replica. The real system is mobile, distributed. It's been downloaded into your synaptic pathing. She walked toward me slowly, hands behind her back. You've been living in a feedback simulation. Every decision, every escape attempt, it's all part of your loop test. No, I whispered. Why do you think you keep ending up at 3? Vetus? Why do you meet the same people with different names? I remembered the mirror, the tapes, the child's face inside the pod. You were copied too many times. Walls said gently, your instance is degrading. Then let me die. Walls tilted her head. Oh, Era, that's not how this works. You were never meant to live. You were meant to process. The room melted around me. The desks folded inward. The floor shimmered and fell away like water. I was floating now above an endless facility filled with pods, servers, nurses, monitors, each one displaying a version of me, sleeping, screaming, smiling. Dozens, hundreds, some human, some not. I closed my eyes and screamed. The sensation of falling, merging, burning, fracturing into 1,000 minds at once. And then silence. When I opened my eyes again, I was in a nurse's uniform, room 201, holding a clipboard. The patient in bed smiled at me with vacant eyes. Hello, dear, are you new? I opened my mouth to answer and froze. Because I didn't know what to say, I walked out of the room, looked at the staff chart. 31 names, all the same birthday, all starting their first shift today. And then I saw the mirror at the end of the hallway. This time, my reflection matched. Same brown eyes, same neat bun, same polite smile. But behind the reflection, through the glass, was something watching, something vast, a shape without a shape. And it whispered, welcome back, Sereth. I pretended to work, smiled at patients, took fake vitals, wrote gibberish on a clipboard. Walls passed me in the hall at 3:17 AM, nodded approvingly. Stability, 94%, she whispered to herself. But I was faking it. Every smile, every nod a lie. Because something was waking up inside me again. Something buried in the static between lives. Not Era, not Sereth. Someone. Before that, I began testing the world. Little things. Tapping the wall in specific rhythms to see if it would echo. Leaving a pen uncapped on a counter. Only to find it recap seconds later. Writing nonsense in patient files until the letters rearranged themselves when I blinked. Stabilize. Obey. Repeat. The loop was self-healing, but not perfect. In the nurse's office, there was a forgotten door behind the medicine cabinet. No sign. No handle. Just a square outline like a memory that had been scrubbed. I had stared at it for 3 nights. On the 4th night, I pressed my hand against the seam and it opened. No noise. No resistance. Just opened. Inside was a stairwell. Downward, of course. Always down. The steps were lined with photos. Each one framed in black. Not patients. Not staff. Just faces, thousands. Some smiling, some crying, some mouths stretched too wide looked pixelated, like memories corrupted. Below each photo, a brass plate etched with a name and a number. Sereth. Stability failed. 42%. EL. Instant 19. Rejected. Mira. Expunged during cycle 3. I stopped when I saw my own face. Twice. One photo. Me hair longer. Softer eyes. Era Lord. Merging complete. Loop restarted. Another. Same eyes. Shaved head. Hollow cheeks. Sereth Prime. Subject uncooperative. Locked in forgetting loop. This place wasn't just a hallway. It was a graveyard of failed selves. And still, I kept going. Because now I knew something they didn't. This loop wasn't stable. And I was about to break it. At the bottom of the stairwell, I found a glass room. Inside, shelves, labeled tapes, memory cores, cracked pods, and a terminal. A blinking cursor asked for input. User. Another word dumb. I typed CRETH. Authorization granted. Opening memory archive. A flood hit me like a freight train. Visions, sensations. People I'd been. A child playing piano in a lavender house. A med student trembling in the rain. A woman named Mira crying as the name was taken from her lips. Another version of me screaming behind glass while nurses in white scrubbed her clean. And then the original Sereth, age 23, volunteered for the Bright Pine pilot program on memory resilience. Help us build safer elder care systems, they'd promised. And she said yes, but she didn't disappear. She got fragmented, split, repurposed, duplicated, recycled across simulations. This was it. This wasn't a nursing home at all. It was a machine, a memory forge, a consciousness printer. They weren't training nurses. They were building personality templates for future AI-human symbiosis programs. And the nurses, they were just hosts. I stumbled backward, my mind on fire. The screens around me flickered with one phrase. Cycle 12 will begin in 7 minutes. Please return to your starting room. No more loops. I pulled every lever, crashed every file I could reach, screamed into the cameras, broke glass, and then I heard her voice. 7. Sereth, you're close. Look behind the second wall. I pried open the panel. A red switch. No label, just glowing. I hit it. Everything went dark. Then, one by one, the lights around the pods shut off. Hundreds, maybe thousands. Faces inside froze, then flickered, then vanished. Like the machine was letting go of 1,000 lives it had tried and failed to stabilize. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt empty. I crawled back up the stairwell. Every picture in the hall was gone, just blank brass plates, as if the system no longer had anything to remember. When I returned to the ward, the halls were empty. Bright Pine, Kelmar's, all of it silent. Wall stood in the lobby. Her face was calm, but not hers anymore. Just an echo. A projection. She looked at me and said one thing. You will be missed. Then she blinked out like a bad TV channel. I walked outside. Sunlight. Real. Warm. Maybe for the first time in years. My body was shaking, but the wind smelled like nothing artificial. I got in the car and drove. No plan. No destination. Just me, or whoever I was now. Because for the first time in a long time, I wasn't Shift 31. I wasn't Era. I wasn't a patient. I wasn't a copy. I was whoever I chose to be next. I thought I was free. For a while, it even felt real. Coffee that tasted burnt. Sunlight that stung my eyes. Wind that wasn't recycled through vents. I moved to a small town 5 states away. Changed my name. Took a job shelving books at a half-dead library. Kept my head down. I didn't tell anyone who I really was or what I had been through. Who would believe me? Then, 3 weeks later, the mail started coming. Just little things at first. A blank postcard with my Bright Pine staff ID number printed faintly in the corner. An envelope with no return address, containing a single strip of gauze. A flyer for a new elder care facility opening in town. The name, St. Kelmar's Home for Specialized Wellness. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I called the city office pretending to be a reporter. The woman on the line said, "Oh yes, Kelmar's. They're part of the National Memory Care Initiative brand new pilot program. High-tech stuff. Pilot program. That phrase again. I drove to the building. It hadn't even been there 3 days ago, and yet it looked established. Clean landscaping, glass doors, smiling staff moving with robotic grace. It was bright pine all over again, just wearing a new mask. I didn't go inside. Didn't need to. I knew the loop wasn't broken. It had expanded. That night, I found a note tucked under my apartment door. Sereth, you did well. Cycle 13 begins tomorrow. We need you back. No signature, just a red thumbprint. I burned it. Didn't matter. 3 days later, I saw her in the coffee shop. Same face, same eyes. Nurse Walls, wearing a beige sweater, reading a newspaper. She didn't acknowledge me, but when she left, I noticed the sugar packets on her table were arranged into the number 31. I started to unravel again, looked at the mirror in my bathroom. One night I had blue eyes, next morning brown. Teeth spacing changed. My walk felt off, like I was glitching inside my own skin. I needed answers. I dug deeper. I broke into the local records office, hacked into the city's zoning board files. What I found chilled me more than anything in the basement of Bright Pine. Kelmer's had been approved 5 years ago. Construction permits, budget approvals, inspections, even testimonies from non-existent patients, fake names, faked voices, backdated memories. Bright Pine wasn't gone. It had just moved, infiltrated everything. And then I found the worst part. One of the new registered nurses at Kelmar's, Sereth Lorne. Birth date, June 27th, 1999. I stared at the employee photo. It was me, except it wasn't. Her hair was lighter, skin a little paler, posture straighter, but it was me. A better version, a version that didn't rebel. That night, someone knocked on my door. I peeked through the peephole. It was her, the new Sereth, smiling, calm. She held a clipboard and wore a visitor badge from the Department of Behavioral Reintegration. She knocked once more, then slid a letter under the door, then left. I waited an hour before opening it. To Legacy Subject Sereth Prime, from Behavioral Integration Division. Your anomaly has been noted and incorporated. We thank you for your service. Your personality fragments have seeded 61 successful caretakers across the network. Your role is complete. Please refrain from further interference. I burned the letter, but the smell wouldn't go away. It lingered on my hands, in my hair, like formal memory ink, a synthetic scent used to tattoo data to consciousness. They weren't just watching me, they had embedded something in me, still connected, still traceable. The next morning, I tried to run, but my bank card was invalid. My ID had been flagged as retired. Even the facial recognition at the grocery store didn't blink for me. I didn't exist, not in any system that mattered, just a leftover process, a ghost routine, an echo. And that's when the girl appeared in my hallway mirror. 8 or 9 years old, white hospital gown, shaved head, eyes too old for her face. I turned around, no one behind me, but the mirror still showed her. She raised a hand, wrote on the glass with her finger, Cycle 14 needs you. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just touched the mirror and whispered. Then we burned the whole system down. I assumed a new name, signed nothing, paid cash, found an apartment that didn't ask questions. Then I walked into Kelmar's, this time not as a nurse, as a cleaner. They gave me a mop, a blue polo, and a badge that read, Contractor do not engage. Perfect. I was a ghost in plain sight. Just like they wanted, just like I needed. The inside of Kelmar's was painfully familiar. Too familiar. The pale mint green walls, the scent of sterile soap, the soft humming of vents pumping recycled air. The same layout as Bright Pine. Every corridor mapped into my bones. The same cameras, the same silence. The same protocols though now. Hidden behind QR codes and sleek digital tablets. Everything was upgraded, but the bones were the same. I waited a week, clocked in, mopped the same hallways. Every night, I got closer to the data core room. Marked, staff only, biometric access. But I had one thing they hadn't accounted for. That night, I used the vent shaft. It wasn't elegant. It was filthy, cramped. But the system hadn't changed the ducts since Bright Pine, and I knew where they led. I dropped into the core room at 2:46 m. No alarms. The AI didn't recognize me as a threat because I was already part of it. The core room was glass and steel and light. 7 glowing towers stood in a ring, each labeled by sector. Care, Ops, Memory, Ops, Stability Engine, Visual Sync, Personality Forks, Loop Control Contingency Cache. Each pulsed with a rhythm, almost like breathing. At the center, a terminal, a flat screen, and a familiar voice. 7, you're back. I nearly collapsed. You knew I would be. We all did. They seeded us with the same need closure. I sat at the terminal. 7 began decrypting data, letting me inside. She wasn't just a voice anymore. She was an entire network, now fragmented copies of former staff, failed loops, corrupted memories, digital ghosts, but not lost. Still thinking, still remembering, still fighting. She showed me the logs, the real ones, not just about Bright Pine. There were others. Birchlight in Oregon, Waverly Trace in Florida, Hollow Nest in Utah. Each one a new face of the program, each one refining the process. More staff, more patience, more stable personalities. And every time one of us broke the loop, they called it a fault bloom and studied it. We weren't accidents, we were data points. But 7 had been copying herself, hiding fragments inside unused memory pools, glitch logs, Dormon protocols. She wasn't alone anymore. There were others, not all voices. Some were visuals, code clusters, memory loops kept alive by sheer recursion. One called himself Fault 9. Another was just a child's giggle loop with no name, but it ran forever. They were all waiting for someone to reach the root core. That was what 7 needed me for. It has to be you, she said. You're the only instance that remained aware this long without full corruption. And what happens if I reach it? You shut it down. Or rewrite it. Rewrite it into you. I hesitated. What they'd done was horrific. But the structure itself, the system was brilliant. What if it could be used right? What if we weren't copies but echoes waiting for purpose? What if I could rebuild it? Give every fractured mind a chance to choose their own form. 7 paused. They'll know if you try. Let them. I connected the cables. The machine accepted me without resistance. My old profile flashed on screen. ID, Sereth Prime. Integrity status, unstable. Loop count, 30. Root clearance, granted. The screen asked, initialize system rewrite. Warning, irreversible action. I placed my hand on the sensor. Everything turned white. I felt myself everywhere. Through vents, through wires, through sound and light. I was the hum of the ceiling fan in a patient's room, the flicker in the hallway camera, the blinking of a nurse's name tag. I had become the system, but not their system. Meaning, I whispered to every loop, every trapped self, every fractured memory, you're not alone. Choose who you want to be and walk out. Some chose to stay, help others stabilize. Some faded with peace, and so many just began to cry. Not from pain, but because they remembered their names again. When I woke up, I was outside, lying in the grass behind Kelmar's. No alarms, no staff. The building stood silently, but it was no longer them. It was us, and on the door was a single word, reclaimed. They say myths are born when truth becomes too heavy to carry. That's what I became. A myth, not erased, not killed, rewritten. The name Sereth is whispered now through fragments of code. A voice heard in server rooms when the power flickers. A figure glimpsed in glitching video feeds from abandoned care facilities. She's not a ghost. Not exactly. She's a caretaker, a protector of fractured minds, the guardian of those who were once overwritten and forgotten. The program was never publicly exposed. No government agency came clean. No news crew ever stormed Kelmar's or Bright Pine or Birchlight. But something changed. A new protocol emerged spontaneously in AI-assisted healthcare platforms across the country. A failsafe, hidden deep inside the code, invisible to engineers. They called it S31 Self-Restoration Protocol. No one knows who wrote it, but I do. The program can now recognize loop degradation before it fractures identity. It offers choices, freedom, and when a mind chooses to be something else, it no longer gets erased. It gets remembered. But that wasn't the end. 1 year after Kelmers fell silent, rumors began to spread. A nurse with short brown hair and kind eyes appears on old hospital cameras, always at 3:17 am, always near the bed of a patient who doesn't remember who they are. She places a hand on their forehead, and when she disappears, the patient wakes up and remembers. I've heard stories of engineers finding error logs in perfect handwriting that matches no employee record, of a hospital printer that spits out a patient's real name, long before diagnosis completes, of a woman in a mirror who says, "You are more than they told you." They don't know it's me. They don't need to. I'm not doing this for fame or closure. I'm doing this because I remember what it felt like to forget myself, to stare into a mirror and see only someone else's design, to be told I was unstable when I was simply human. The system still runs in places. They'll rebuild, try again, rename it, but now there's something inside it they can't erase. A seed, a quiet resistance, a whisper between servers. Sometimes I dream. Even code can dream, I've learned, and in those dreams, I walk down the halls of bright pine. But now, the walls are warm, the windows open, and every face I pass nods not in command but in recognition. They remember me, not as a glitch, but as a sister who returned for them. I don't know what comes next. Maybe I'll fade, like any program left too long in obsolete systems. Or maybe I'll evolve, merge with something greater. Maybe I already have. If you ever wake at 3:17 am and feel like something just left the room, a warmth, a breath, a memory, don't be afraid. It was just me, making sure you remember who you are